The Hong Kong chief executive, Carrie Lam, has just announced on local television, as expected, a full withdrawal of the controversial extradition bill. Now, the bill would have allowed suspects to stand trial in mainland China. It is one of 5 demands from pro-democracy protesters who have taken to the streets for 13 weeks now in widespread, sometimes violent protests. Now, the 4 other demands are for the resignation of the chief executive, Carrie Lam. They've asked for that. They've also asked for an independent inquiry into police brutality, for those arrested to be exonerated and released, as well as greater democratic freedoms. Now, Lam also addressed the other demands by protesters. She said that the government would use the existing inquiry as opposed to setting up an independent investigation, and that the release of protesters from detention is not an acceptable demand.
This is something that protesters have been waiting for the past 3 months. And as we've heard from Joshua Wong and other protesters on social media, other citizens here in Hong Kong, is that this is too little too late. Now, I was at the press conference with Carrie Lam yesterday at her offices when she fronted the media after that leaked audio recording obtained by Reuters of her speaking to business people at a private luncheon last week, where she said that if she had a choice, she would quit, that the havoc that she has caused here in Hong Kong through this extradition bill is unforgivable. She did, however, when pushed by the media, say that she has never tendered her resignation to Beijing. She says, "I've never considered resigning to Beijing." We know that Carrie Lam has been under enormous pressure. This is a woman, a 62-year-old woman, a lifetime bureaucrat who has had to answer to not just the people of Hong Kong, but to Beijing. At the end of the day, Beijing is her master, and from what we have been hearing over the past couple of months, she put forward her resignation. Beijing didn't accept it. Beijing also said, we will not cave into those 5 demands. So the question, Christy, other than will this quell the protest, is why has China allowed Carrie Lam to formally withdraw this very controversial extradition bill after saying for the last 3 months that it wouldn't do that? Now, some commentators are saying that the upcoming National Day celebrations on the 1st of October, that is the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, that is a very important day in the calendar for China, and they don't want the violence here in Hong Kong, the protests here in Hong Kong, to overshadow those National Day celebrations. So the feeling certainly has been they need to get a handle on the situation here in Hong Kong so that the violence doesn't upstage what happens in China on the 1st of October. But as we've been hearing, protests are likely to continue.
After 37 years in power, demanding nothing less than absolute loyalty, Robert Mugabe's reign was never going to end at the ballot box. But few could have imagined those 2 weeks in November 2017 when his military moved against him and his people took to the streets.
So what did those crowds mean to former President Mugabe? What did he say?
You saw that they spoke. You saw that they spoke.
Did it break him?
It moved him. It moved him in this sense that he realized they are speaking to say, this is enough.
In negotiations, the generals would salute the man they were looking to overthrow. Still, the coup and his resignation was a humiliating exit for Mugabe, whose very name came to define Zimbabwe.
This is a man who had so much to offer to Zimbabweans, but he didn't. He focused on himself. What a tragedy. The death of Robert Mugabe breaks my heart within the context of the millions of lives that he destroyed, the millions of lives that he wrecked.
Robert Mugabe's legacy was built by violence and oppression, and an economic collapse so bad, money became worthless and millions fled. For many, he left behind a shell of a country.
I, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, do swear.
So it's easy to forget that at first he was likened to Nelson Mandela. Mugabe preached reconciliation after a brutal liberation struggle that he helped lead, repaired bonds with former colonial master Britain. He was even knighted.
The historical links between the United Kingdom and Zimbabwe, which date from far back in history, have grown from strength to strength over the years.
A young Zimbabwe became the envy of the continent. Mugabe, trained as a teacher, presided over an education revolution and a thriving agricultural powerhouse.
Robert Mugabe was my hero, and I looked up to Robert Mugabe's eloquence, Robert Mugabe's confidence in postulating amazing positions. And I decided that this is the man that impressed me.
But Mugabe liked to say he had a degree in violence. And from the start, he squashed dissent.
How?
Yes, I saw people being killed. I saw them killed, and you could not say a word.
Alice Moali relives her trauma every day. Her back was broken by the North Korean-trained 5th Brigade as they swept through Matabeleland in 1983. The operation was called Gukurahundi in Shona, or the rains that wash away the chaff. Meant to crush Mugabe's rivals, civilians were targeted, victims chosen along ethnic lines. When Mugabe's power was again threatened, this time at the ballot, he sanctioned violent attacks, seizing white-owned farms by so-called war veterans, strengthening his hand. And he crushed a rising opposition, using his hold on state security. But the violence shocked the world. Mugabe was abandoned by the West and its aid, and the country never fully recovered.
They want to come to us and dictate to us what we must do. That shall never be. Not in Zimbabwe. Never, never. Whatever the cost.
Robert Mugabe was not an idiot in the country. He worked hard for this country. Mistakes were done, but he's a man who cared. But ultimately, of course, the president is, in the end, wholly responsible for whatever action.
Actions throughout a long rule and rapid demise that many critics say were driven by Mugabe's #1 priority, himself.